2023 edition of City Connection, the live television program from the Community Media Center with Grand Rapids Mayor Rosalynn Bliss, offering the community the opportunity to hear about efforts from City Hall and beyond. With the Community Media Center, I'm your host, Allison Donahue. Along with Mayor Bliss, Commissioner Robbins will be joining us today on City Connection. In the second half of the show, we provide time with the mayor and the commissioner to take some of your questions and comments. To take part in the conversation, you can send your questions or comments to cityconnection@grcmc.org, through Twitter at GRTAccess, or on the GRTV Facebook page. City Connection, a collaboration between Community Media Center and the City of Grand Rapids, is broadcasting live today, August 7, 2023, here on Community Access Television Channel 24 and live streaming at therapidian.org and at GRTV's Facebook page. We will be rebroadcasting the program throughout the GRTV's Channel 25. And now, in the studio with me today is Mayor Rosalynn Bliss. Hi, Mayor. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
It's great seeing you, too. So I have a few exciting things that have happened. We haven't seen you in over a month now, since we weren't here last. Just to start off, can you tell me a little bit about some money that came in from the state of Michigan? It looks like the city received over $90 million for community and capital projects from the state in their most recent budget. Can you tell us more about how these funds will be utilized and what impact it's going to have on the city?
Thank you. We were so excited with the budget process to have so many allocations for important projects here in the city of Grand Rapids. For the city specifically, we were able to secure two significant pots of money to support important projects, largely in the third ward. So we received an allocation of $6 million and so I'll talk about that, and then I'll talk about the fire stations, and then I'll allude to some of the other projects, and
Great.
Just really want to express my appreciation to our West Michigan delegates who are representing us in Lansing for their support. So let's first start, we'll talk about the lodge. So at MLK Park, it's a very old, right next to the pool. And my goodness, I feel like for 15 years, the community has been talking about wanting to redevelop that lodge. There was a lot of conversation years ago about raising private dollars to do some rehabilitation of the lodge. And then at Parks Millage, we started to think bigger, and we said, okay, this park, this neighborhood really needs a larger scale investment. So initially we were thinking of kind of a smaller lodge, I would say close to like $5 to $7 million, and then through community engagement, the in size grew. So we now are looking at a lodge that will probably be closer to $16 million, and so with that, we needed to fill some gaps, and that's where the state came in. So with the $6 million allocation, we'll be able to move forward on that. At the lodge, it's going to be really extensive. There will be community space, and in addition to inside, all folks can come and get some exercise, and we're hoping to have it be more of a community hub. We're in the design phase for that right now, and then hopefully we'll break ground within, my hope is in the next 8 months. Wow. Or so. So that's an exciting project. We also are still working on redoing the lodge at Roosevelt. Some additional dollars for that, and then also redeveloping Plaza Roosevelt, which is that park right along Granville Avenue that was added probably about 2 years ago with that whole development over there at Plaza Roosevelt. So those are 3 exciting park projects. And then we also secured $35 million that's dedicated to helping us build 2 fire stations, brand new fire stations. City hasn't done that in decades. And then it'll help us start to move forward on building a new fire department training facility. So about 2 months ago, the city moved forward on buying some property here on the west side, actually, over on Park, and we move our fire department training facilities over there. Right now, they're kind of fragmented about, so we have them in different locations throughout the entire city. But as our city grows and our fire department grows, as the needs really expand for the fire department to respond to more calls, we need to make sure that they have a good training facility. And then the 2 I should say, one will be on Division and one will be on Kalamazoo. and they will help meet the need in the third ward and in areas of the city that we're continuing to see growth, but that we're also not meeting our goals on getting to those calls as quickly as we would like.
So those two stations, they're not replacing current stations, they're additional.
One will be, and then one will be replacing the one on Division. And we've been talking about doing that for quite some time. We purchased some property. We have, if you go down Division, it's a really old fire station that exists there now. So that will be replaced. Again, really thinking about how do we have more community amenities in that space as well.
Great. So earlier this summer, you were out of the city, far away from the city. You took a trip to South Korea and Japan to visit Grand Rapids' sister cities. Can you tell us a little bit about that trip and why sister cities mean something to Grand Rapids and what they're for?
Yeah, that's a question. It was a long time. It ended up being about an 11-day trip, and with the time change, it felt a whole lot longer. So Sister Cities International has been around for decades, and most cities around the country, especially larger cities, we have sister cities. And so here in Grand Rapids, we have a number of cities, one in Mexico and Africa and Poland and Italy. Omihachiman, Japan, which is one of our oldest sister cities. We actually established that relationship back in 1986 under Mayor Helmholtz. So it was fun to go and see the history of that relationship. And then about 2 years ago, actually, COVID added another sister city, Gangnam-gu district in South Korea. And there's a process that we go through when we add sister cities, but it all falls under a Sister City International Committee that exists here in Grand Rapids. And typically it's because we have ties to that community, whether it's economic or cultural or arts. Or a lot of people in Grand Rapids who have familial or personal relationships with those cities, or we have businesses that have close ties to those cities. So we decided if we're going all the way to South Korea, we might as well also see Omihachiman and visit them. And so we spent about 5-6 days in Omihachiman for a couple days before stopping in Tokyo and seeing, and I did some presentations there with some local companies, and then we came back home. And you know, there's different values, I would say. We had a large delegation, about 15 individuals from Grand Rapids from different sectors joined us. We spent time with both mayors, went on some tours of some of their cultural and historical sites, and then we actually went and visited quite a few businesses. So there was one company in Omihachiman that's actually looking at expanding here in the United States, and they're currently looking at 2 locations here in the state of Michigan. Toured with them, gave them a lot of information about opportunities here in Michigan. So it was kind of a mix of very formal interactions with their elected officials and members of their city hall, and then some tours, historical tours, and then some business visits as well.
So you got the whole deal.
It was
tour.
very busy. Yeah, I think especially when you're the mayor. So in both cities, I spoke, I did presentations. It was really nice to have an incredible interpreter with us that helped with that. And so it was busy, but it was really cool.
I heard there's something coming up that might be great for dog owners happening in Grand Rapids. Can you tell us a little bit about the wagon wade returning to Richmond Pool Park this month?
Yeah, so going back to parks, we have 3 amazing pools in our city. Park is one of them. We have MLK Park and Briggs. And at the end of every season, actually not every season, but we've been doing it for a number of years now, to celebrate the closing of the season, we will open it up for dog lovers and dog owners to bring their little pooches out and give them a chance to swim and enjoy the water as well. It is coming up. It's Sunday, August 20th at 11 a.m. at Richmond Park. Great. It's a ton of fun. If you have it, you do have to sign up. So because we only have a certain capacity in the pool, so I encourage you to do that. But I also encourage people to just get out and continue to enjoy our park. So many amazing park spaces in every ward. So of course I try to get out and get into our parks and walk the trails and get out on my bike as much as possible. But I encourage people to do that. Just recently, I went to the Highlands over here by Blandford. If individuals are there, I really encourage them to do it. It's a beautiful natural space. It's really surreal and peaceful, and there's some great natural walking trails. But I just encourage folks to get out there. Yeah, we just have so many opportunities. Almond Park, this summer we dedicated a forest, one of the few in the state of Michigan. So even though it's technically not in the city of Grand Rapids, there's a whole history about how the city of Grand Rapids got a park in Ottawa County. It's fascinating. But it's really a beautiful place. So I encourage folks, when they have some downtime or they just need a break from and stress that comes with it, to get out there and enjoy those park spaces.
Yeah, especially when you have a reason to bring your dog with you. It's not too bad.
Yeah.
The city is also switching gears now. The city's looking for proposals for the next set of Grand Rapids, and when you're looking for requests for proposals. Can you tell me a little bit about what that program is and really what you're looking for from folks?
Yeah, so this is a great program that started, we did it years ago, and the process itself is that we had individuals from each ward come up with ideas that they want, things that they wanted to see or programs they wanted to see in their wards. And then we went through a voting process. The City Commission allocated $2 million, $1 million for the third ward, $400,000 for the second ward, $600,000 ward. And as the ideas came, kind of bubbled to the top, as I say, and were voted on, we had a whole list of items. And so we have started to roll those out. And what we're doing is we're going through an RFP process, or what we call a request for proposals. So one, to cure violence into the second ward. Clearly, we already have a partnership with Urban League. They're the ones running the cure violence program in the third ward, and so we are working with them to expand. But then there's other requests around neighborhood cleanups. There's mental health supports, some education around poisoning. Go to our city website, and we actually have an entire page just for participatory budgeting. You will see a list of initiatives or programs that we are actively asking for proposals from community, from those neighborhoods. We're asking folks to apply for that, and then we'll go through a process where we select a partner to work with us to implement that program. But it's really a great way to get involved, and also to make sure that those priorities that were identified through participatory budgeting are being implemented in the neighborhood by people and organizations that are really connected to that neighborhood.
And do you have a deadline for those proposals?
We do have a deadline for those proposals, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. I think they were opened up for 4 weeks.
Okay.
But you can find that right on the city's website.
Great.
Yeah.
And we'll see if we can get that deadline before
thank
then.
you.
Yeah, so are there any different types of programs that you're hoping, we're about to here in a second, but anything more that you're excited about?
Yeah, let me go back to some of the work that came out of the state with the budget, but then also some of our partnership with the state that has resulted in policy changes that have been a priority for the city of Grand Rapids. So in addition to the $1 million for fire stations and the MLK Lodge, a lot of our local partners receive state funding, including the zoo and the Hispanic Chamber and the Public Museum and the Emory. So we had a whole host of priority projects here in Grand Rapids that were funded as part of the state budget, equaling almost $1 million. It was just, it doesn't happen very often. I've lived through the state budget process for years and years and years, and I can tell you this is an anomaly. And we're really grateful to have some state funds support important Grand Rapids projects. But also the state passed a housing TIF package, which is some of our priorities around housing and affordable housing, as well as legislation that will enable Grand Rapids to start a Grand Rapids land bank. So again, there's always the policy piece and the funding piece. and the state, they're just really key partners in that.
Yeah, definitely. The Grand Rapids really won out with the state this year.
Yeah.
It looks like it's about time for our first break. When we come back, Mayor Bliss will be talking to First Ward Commissioner Drew Robbins. So stay tuned and we'll be right back.
For over 30 years after humble beginnings as a public access TV station, the Community Media Center has grown to be an active, multi-platform media and technology assistance organization, encouraging and enabling our community to push the creative boundaries. We power a variety of resources, including a music-centered community radio station, WYCE, a community venue with stage and screen at Wealthy Theater, citizen-driven journalism with the Rapidian, a web development team empowering local nonprofits, an education department that trains and broadens students' minds, and a free speech public access television studio, GRTV, where it all began. By introducing audiences to new voices and ideas, we enhance community engagement and create connections between artists and audiences, enriching our city's cultural offerings. We empower and collaborate with platforms and resources accessible to all and used by all. Every free democratic society depends on media, accessible to the community and uncensored by government. The Community Media Center continues this work for the media landscape of today and tomorrow. These platforms and services empower our neighbors to tell their stories and explore the richness of culture that Grand Rapids has to offer. Connect, discover, learn, create, and share. The Grand Rapids Community Media Center.
Welcome back. I'm so glad to have with me today one of my newest colleagues on the City Commission, Commissioner Drew Robbins. He was elected last year to represent the First Ward. I don't know, are you officially the youngest commissioner on the commission now?
Currently, yes. I'm not sure about in his. It's got to be. I would think.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
Pretty close. Oh, welcome. So I've had the joy to work with him now and serve with him for I'm going on 8 months, and I know it's a whirlwind. I remember sitting in your chair. My goodness, it seems like a very long time ago now, back in 2006, and just getting my head around it, and a huge, as I know you know, but I think it's hard to imagine if you haven't been in the seat. So I'm glad you're with me today. What I'd like to do is just for people who don't know you, haven't met you, to learn more about you, and then we can talk about some of your priorities and then what you've learned and what you're hoping to accomplish during this term. So for folks who know you, why don't you tell us a little bit about where'd you grow up and what do you do and where'd you go to college? And
yeah, great question. Well, first of all, I'm happy to be here and be part of this broadcast here. So yeah, I'm Drew Robbins. I grew up in a very small, close-knit rural town up in northern Michigan. Moved down here 10 years actually, almost to the day. It was August 2013. It's been a whirlwind myself being here, but I love this community. Like I said, I went to Grand Valley. I studied business and finance at the school downtown. Yeah, I really enjoyed my time there. I graduated, worked full-time for a couple of years, downtown Grand Rapids at a really small company. And then, I don't know, I just kind of got an itch to have life experience where I kind of settled into the office life for a long term. And so I left my job, actually enlisted in the Army Reserves and moved away for my training for about 8 months. Completed that and then moved back. I work at Gordon Food Service now at their home office down in Wyoming. I do get to work from home primarily, which is a big benefit too, and do a lot of type work and things like that. But yeah, I think I always tell people when I was away, I met a lot of different individuals from around the country, and many of them use the military kind of as a means to get away, experience something new, and I found not a lot of people had a lot of pride in where they came from and where they grew up. And I just remember sitting around one day thinking that couldn't share that same feeling. I loved where I came from, and the entire time I was gone, I was terribly homesick. I missed my parents, I missed my friends, I missed my community here in Grand Rapids, and I just could not wait to come back soon enough. And so once I did, I kind of just decided, I wanted to do something more hands-on with my community. I love serving in the military experience at that. But at the same time, too, I think it's important just to be rooted in your own community and the people you see and interact with on a day-to-day basis. And so just kind of jumped 2 feet into this. And like you said, it's an enormous learning curve for anybody. And there's just so much you don't know until you're in the role yourself and learning it and digesting and having those conversations. But it's been sort of a pleasure. 7 months have come and gone very, very quickly. But it's been all uphill. I think it's been a great challenge and also very rewarding getting to meet so many people, being a part of a lot of very important conversations that are really shaping the future of our city for decades to come. And so, yeah, it's an honor, and I'm happy to be here. So
yeah. Well, you still have a long journey ahead of you. So let's talk about that a little bit. So for folks who haven't ever sat in our seats, I know the first few months you are just inundated with a lot of information.
Yep.
You're tasked with getting out and touring all of our city facilities. I think sometimes people don't realize, in addition to what you see on a Tuesday, there's a lot of city facilities, there's a lot of city services,
yes.
And it's important, and many of them very essential, right? From water to wastewater to trash pickup to refuse to a composting site to waste to energy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of getting to know not just those services, but being aware of what needs are, because then we get something across our table
yes.
At one of our either standing committees or committee of the whole, and it's really important that you fully understand that. So why don't you talk a little bit about what the last 7.5 months have been like for you? Has there been any surprises? And what are you excited about?
Oh, great question. I would say the last 7 months have just been a lot of question asking. Like I said, I get to work from home, which is a huge benefit. So I've been trying to fill my calendar up with as many lunch meetings as I can with various neighborhood organizations and city staff members who have been here for decades and know the operations of the city inside and out. And we're incredibly grateful to have a lot of allowing myself to be back in a place of kind of base zero knowledge or just very little knowledge. And not being afraid to kind of admit that I don't know something, ask a dumb question, or if I think it's a dumb question. And I found that, everybody is incredibly welcoming. The city did an awesome job, too, of just onboarding us and making sure we had all the we needed to be, thrive and do well in this role. So that's kind of been my whole goal for the first year, really, is just doing a lot of listening. Like you said, the words are enormous. Like, to be able to represent 60,000+ people is an enormous responsibility. And each of those neighborhoods has a unique flavor, different priorities, different needs. And so I've spent most of my time in Grand Rapids within the west side of the city, but the first ward is incredibly diverse, both geographically, ethnically. So being able just to spend intentional time with different neighborhoods, being able to understand exactly what makes them special and unique has been really awesome too. So really, that's kind of my biggest goal for the year is getting myself acquainted with just getting out, meeting people, and just letting people know that I'm here to serve them ultimately. And I'm excited to continue to do that for the next couple years here. So.
Well, and you made me think of this. I should have clarified where the first ward is.
Yes.
Not everyone is familiar with the ward system. So west side from the river out to water, kind of like Michigan out till you hit Standale.
Yep.
But then it goes all the way Black Hills, Division, and then a portion of Roosevelt Park and a portion of Elger Heights. And do you have a little bit of downtown?
Yes, yes, south of Fulton up to east to, I think it's Madison,
Okay.
Jefferson.
Okay.
So Plaza Towers is first word. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So pretty big area, but as you
Yes.
said, very diverse, different
Yeah.
needs. And then in addition to obviously our very formal roles on Tuesdays, we have city commission meeting tomorrow, so we'll be in
Yep.
meetings pretty much all day. There's a lot of other boards and commissions that you serve on, are connected to your ward. So do you want to share a little bit about some of the other appointments you have, as well as some of the other work that you do in relation to being a city commissioner?
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of committees too, so I serve on the Committee of Appointments is the first one. And that body is really in charge of just finding vacancies within our, committees, boards that we have civilians serving on, and being able to connect, individuals who we know within our constituency to those types of opportunities to have their voice heard. And really it helps keep the city informed of what's going on day to day, kind of on a ground level. So being able to be a part of that has been a really cool experience. Let's see what else. I'm on community development as well. So that board seems to have a lot of different responsibilities, but one of the main ones is distributing a lot of funding from the federal and state level to various neighborhood organizations, such as our business associations, and things of that nature too. So being able to be a part of that, understanding the process, it's incredibly complex. As anything related and funding comes with a lot of strings attached, and so helping organizations understand how to utilize that funding, how to remain compliant when they do receive it, is a big function of the community development department. So, and then beyond that, I get to be on the economic development project team as well, which is one of my personal favorites. It's kind of a sort of a group, or just updates regularly on sort of the larger developments going on within our city, kind of some of the more transformative projects, whether that be housing, amphitheater related, things like that. So yeah, beyond that, there's dozens more that we get to have our fingers in as well. So it's been great.
And you also serve on a quarter improvement district?
Correct.
You're on the division?
Yep, South Division Granville, yep.
Yeah.
CIA.
So CIA, if you're not familiar with that, it's a tax increment captured district, kind of like the Downtown Development Authority. So that district of the city, a business district, is able to capture a little bit of the property tax, accumulate funds, and then reinvest it. Really important. We, when I was first elected, we didn't have any, and now we have one pretty much in every business district throughout the city, and there's a city commissioner that serves on each of those. And you serve on the South Division one.
I do.
So,
Yeah,
thank you.
and that's been a great experience too. I've really enjoyed getting to meet the folks from down there. They're incredibly passionate about their neighborhood, unique, and it's been great to work with them. So
Yeah. So we have just a couple minutes left before we take another break, and then we'll go to some additional Q&A.
Sure.
So one thing in the last 7.5 months that has surprised you?
Oh, that surprised me. That's a great question. I feel like you never know quite what to do, like this, but I think, people have always kind of joked around about the whole Grand Rapids nice culture, and I think I have been pleasantly surprised at how true that is. I think when it comes to the city staff, when it comes to residents, everybody is just so passionate about this community, about our city. We truly believe we're one of the best in this country, in my opinion, to live, to work, to raise a family. And so I think just being able to kind of have some camaraderie with all those individuals and kind of move forward together, making sometimes hard decisions, but decisions that are necessary for moving our city forward. So I think that's something I kind of knew culture, but to from more of a leadership position too has been awesome. So yeah, that's a great point. And I always say, even when we disagree with someone, what ties us together is that we love this city and that we're passionate about it. So. That's the beauty of democracy, as I say. Absolutely.
All right, well, on that note, we'll take a little break and sit back to some more questions.
The Wealthy Theater is Grand Rapids' local movie theater and performance center. Since 1998, it has been a host to nationally touring music groups,
local theater performances, and a variety of community events. Today, the Wealthy Theater is not only a landmark community treasure with historic significance, but a pioneer in the infusion of technology and traditional theater. Underneath the elegance and classic sensibility that defines Wealthy Theater, there is a matrix of new technologies. The theater is completely digital and outfitted with cameras and microphones for concerts, theater and comedy troupes, speakers and lecturers, and so much more. Experience all that Wealthy Theater has to offer. And bring a friend. Be surprised by the Wealthy Theater.
WYCE is a world of music. We aim to shine a light on underserved musical artists in a non-commercial format with no advertisements. Volunteers come in to create personalized music programming that broadcasts over the air at 88.1 FM to West Michigan and via the internet to listeners all over the world. These listeners sponsor our efforts, keeping WYCE independent and community-owned. Musicians use the station to broaden their audience and build support for their latest projects by submitting their music to be included in our broadcast and performing live in studio. Businesses find their customers through underwriting, nonprofits inform the community to their mission, and listeners stay informed about local events. We believe that music is a powerful force that creates quality relationships in our community, that speaks to our emotions, and provides the soundtrack to our lives.
Hello and welcome back to City Connection. I'm your host, Allison Donahue. I'm joined here with Rosalynn, First Ward Commissioner Drew Robbins. Now is the time where we get to take some questions from the audience that have been sent in. This first question is for you, Commissioner. And we talked about this in the last section, but it's a great reminder of where our wards are. So this is a question from Maura. What are the boundaries of the ward?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I will start by saying very few people in the city know what ward they live in or where the boundaries are. So I applaud you for asking. So the first ward has historically kind of been thought of as the greater west side of the city. So everything west of the city up to the boundaries with Walker is encompassed within the first ward. And then I also have presenting some on the south side of the river, so Roosevelt Park neighborhood, parts of Garfield Park, Alger Heights, and then all of South Division all the way down to 28th Street too. So it's very big geographically, very spread out, and as I mentioned previously, very diverse too in terms of the types of people and who live there. So yeah.
Great. This question is for the mayor.
Right.
Ken said, I overheard some folks at the bar the other night discussing the city criminalizing homelessness. I hope this isn't true. We should be investing in services and homes rather than pushing people out.
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking that question. I don't frame it as criminalizing homelessness. So let me give you a little history. Important, and that actually the city has been having for months. And I'll preface it by saying, absolutely, I firmly believe that the solution to homelessness is housing, and the city invests millions of dollars into organizations to help people find housing. So we invest in rapid rehousing first, permanent supportive housing. We have a project on our list tomorrow for economic development project team that is additional permanent supportive housing units here in the city of Grand Rapids. So I know how important those services are. Obviously, we have shelter space with multiple locations in town. But backing up to the ordinance changes that were adopted at our last commission meeting. So the city has long had ordinances, or as I call it, they're like local laws. So for people who aren't familiar with the language, ordinances, every city has the ability to pass local ordinances or laws that regulate or crime within that city. So at the end of last year, we had a growing number of individuals who were sharing concerns about some of the challenges that they were having downtown and about illegal behavior happening that wasn't being enforced. And actually, there was Commerce who presented an ordinance that they wanted the City Commission to pass that would have made it illegal to sit and lie down for an extended period of time in public right-of-ways. City Commission, at the time, it was a different commission that exists today because we had 3 commissioners who were coming off the commission and 3 commissioners who got in November. But in December, myself and the commissioners serving at the time said we are not moving forward with a sit and lie ordinance. We already have ordinances on the books that address issues around, and I'll give you some of the examples that were brought to our attention around defecation, indecent exposure, harassment. And so what the commission did in January is said, let's look at all of the ordinances that we currently have on the books. And let's identify which ones the language needs to be amended or changed or struck altogether. And let's come up with a plan to enforce the ordinances that we have on the books. And with nonprofit organizations and others to identify what gaps exist in the community that we can contribute additional dollars to. Let's work with the county. We know a big issue is mental health and substance use. So we came together and started working with community partners, which we've already been working with them on. But we said, if we're going to do anything, we really need a multi-pronged. So over the course of, I'd say about 5 months, we were able to assess, okay, what ordinances exist that we can enforce that will address some of the problematic behaviors and, quite frankly, inappropriate behaviors or illegal behaviors happening, not just downtown, but all over our city. How can we invest in resources, services, and then what are some areas that we can't currently address with our current ordinances? So from that process of really assessing what we have and what needs to be done, we made 3 changes to current ordinances. So we already have a nuisance ordinance that regulates a whole host of things, and we added language saying how much property you could have in a park or in a public space, wanting to make sure that those spaces are available for everyone. And then we looked at our disorderly conduct ordinance, which is already an ordinance that we have on the books, and we clarified some language around what does accosting mean. So we added accosting, and so if somebody comes up to you and asks you for something and you say no and they follow you and continue to ask you for whether it's money or something else, then that would be considered accosting. And then we also updated our loitering language and made it automatically loitering if you're, let's say, preventing somebody from getting into a building. Historically, that had fallen under trespass, so we added it under loitering. So those were some of the changes that we made. It is not contingent on housing status. So whether you are unsheltered or not, these are behaviors that are now captured under those ordinance changes.
And ask just that, will there be like extra police staff being sent out to make sure that this isn't happening, or will it be on a call basis for these issues?
Yeah, people, so we already have a homeless outreach team and they're out proactively, and Commissioner, you can jump in if you like, and they're already out there proactively during the day. The nuisance violations, actually, it's not a police response, it's a code enforcement response. So let's say you do have a large pile of belongings. We also partnered with Mel Trotter, and we have secured bins that people can put their stuff in and keep them safely. And so even if something is in the right of way, we'll put it we'll notice, and we'll put it in a safe space for someone, and they can collect it within 30 days. So that's not a misdemeanor or a criminal offense. It's a civil infraction. It's a nuisance complaint. Similar to if somebody was, using a amplified, a microphone and disturbing and creating it'd be similar. And then for the loitering and accosting, that does fall under our disorderly conduct or criminal offense, and that will be enforced. But our hope is that we're very proactive. We can educate people about what they can and can't do and what spaces they can and can't do it, and that there'll be voluntary compliance. And then also we with investigative services. So one of them is in partnership with Crossroads. So we have a fusion center. It's a place people can go during the day and get support that they need and connect with services. And then we invested, it's a $1.5 million contract. The city is supporting it with $500,000, and then we have the county and philanthropy getting to that 1.5 million with community rebuilders to do rapid rehousing. And they are already actively working with individuals who are unsheltered to find them more temporary or permanent supportive housing.
Great, and one more.
Yeah,
my
yeah.
own personal
Please.
question.
I appreciate being able to clarify because it's a lot of information and a lot of headlines, but there's a whole host of details that come below those headlines, and we can't always control the headlines.
Right,
Yep.
right. So if the city does take a resident's belongings and puts it in a bin, does the resident have to pay anything to pick up their
No.
belongings?
No, they don't have to pay to store them. They pick them up. Want to keep them there for a longer period of time, they're welcome to do that. Ultimately, we want them to find a place to live where they can have their belongings, and that's ultimately what we're trying to do.
Perfect. Well, now that you've taken a few of my extra
Yes,
questions,
I'm
let's
glad
go
you
on-
asked.
let's
I'm
go on
actually
to
really glad you
someone
asked.
else. Okay, this is another question for the mayor. Allison said in the news that the city was talking about purchasing drones for policing. I haven't heard anything recently. What was the decision on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a decision hasn't been made. So we have a surveillance policy that the City Commission passed actually, I think, over a year ago. You weren't on the commission yet. And so we have a surveillance policy in place. Anytime public safety or any of our departments wants to buy a piece of surveillance, whether it's drones or something else, they have to follow this policy. Part of the policy is that they have to get community input and go through a community engagement process. So initially, our police chief, Chief Winstrom, came forward and said, we really need the addition of drone tool for all of these different types of calls that we get. And so he presented it to the City Commission, kind of shared what his hopes were, went out, had a number of community meetings, and it hasn't come back before us for approval. So it will likely come back to the City Commission for debate and discussion, but it'll be in the form of this is the type of drone that we want to buy, this is the policy that we're following, these are the concerns that have been raised and how we're going to address them. So I anticipate probably within the next 30 days we'll have the chief come back before us now that he's gone through the community process.
Great.
Yeah.
This is a question for the commissioner from Tanya. What are you going to ensure the, quote, diverse first ward, as you described it, is serving everyone equitably?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, equity is one of the values of our city. Every decision we make, whether it's just through the lens, how is this impacting various individuals and different people group? Even as realizing, which parts of our city have historically been underserved. I know Mayor mentioned, even with the fire departments, I think that's a great example of how we realized, part of the third ward historically did not have equal access or equitable access to fire. Incredibly important. And so I think that's a good example of kind of our mentality as we're going through a lot of these decisions when it comes to funding, when it comes to, even things as small as like, where do we buy lunch for a meeting? Being mindful and intentional about, what's a new neighborhood that I haven't been to in a while, or that I could go and opportunity to connect with them and to engage with them. So it's challenging. I'm not gonna say that it's an easy thing to balance the needs of tens of thousands of unique individuals with different needs and wants. But it is rewarding to be able to interact with so many different people, and I've learned a lot from them as well too. So I anticipate that being able to interact with so many different people is going to be formative for myself as well too. So it's a real pleasure.
Great. Do you feel like you've gotten a chance to get to know all the different neighborhoods in your ward so far?
No, I would say so. Yeah, I've definitely made my rounds, and even back before I was elected, I made a point to campaign and be knocking doors and feel part of my. Because I think it's every individual has the right to be represented by me as an individual, and so I want every single person to know that if they email me, they call me, that I'll give them the same treatment regardless of what part of the city that they live into. So there's always more work to be done in building those relationships, but so far I'm proud of what I've been able to do. So.
And can I just add one thing? I know we're going to wrap up and take a break. The city is also working, and the city commission especially, we've been working really hard to really drill down into data to make sure that even our investments are equitable across the city. So whether that's streets, sidewalks, trees, green space, trails. We have over the last several years disaggregated everything so that you can clearly see how much money and how much investment is going to what neighborhoods where. LED streetlights, we started in some of our most disinvested communities, and you can find all of that on our website, and then we get updates on the update coming up at our commission retreat, and we'll have all of that data and information broken down.
Great. Good.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see more of that.
Yeah.
Well, we are going to take a break. Thank you so much for taking questions, and we'll be back in a few minutes.
How do you build a strong local food economy? Meet Chris. Chris is opening Osteria Rosa, a locally sourced Italian restaurant in a building brought back to life by 616 Development. But he doesn't know any local farmers to supply him with food year-round. This is Melissa. Melissa runs the Fulton Street Farmers Market and publishes a long list, even in the dead of winter, of available produce, meats, bakery goods, and more on the Rapidian. This is Amy. Amy wants to do more to support the farmers in her local food economy. Amy talks to Melissa, who introduces her to farmers at the Fulton Street Farmers Market, and Amy, in turn, publishes their stories, also on the Rapidian. Chris hears about the Rapidian and now has access to a local grocery list and information that he needs to make connections with local farmers. He feeds his patrons with local food year-round. Connections multiply. Meals are shared. A stronger local food economy is built.
Welcome back to City Connection. I'm your host, Donahue, with the Mayor, Rosalynn Bliss. We are taking questions from Grand Rapidians. So let's get started. This is a question from Laura. She just graduated college and says she's trying to move into the city so she can stay here, but she finds that she's just priced out of anything she can afford. It makes me feel like I have to drive 30 minutes to any job I get, and it's very frustrating while I'm trying to cut down on my carbon footprint, especially knowing many of my friends are in the same boat and that we're forced to move away or exasperate an already burning planet. The city wants to be an environmentally friendly city, but this isn't helping.
Is it Laura?
It's Laura.
Laura, I want you to stay in Grand Rapids. And I realize that it's a huge issue. The city has had, and we've been in the throes of a housing crisis for years now, largely because we just didn't keep up with demand. So we have this huge demand and we don't have enough supply. And it's getting expensive for a number of reasons. And so there's some things that we're doing. Unfortunately, some of it is driven by the private sector, but we are starting to see some significant developments happen, not just in the city, but surrounding Grand Rapids. And that should help with the supply on the supply side. And with that, it should come down. But I'm very concerned about affordable housing, accessible housing. There's a track to build low-income housing with state support through low-income housing tax credits. We're very aggressive. We've been actually quite successful in getting support from the state for low-income housing tax credits. Housing, because it's really, there's a market for that, and the people who can afford it, they invest. I'm concerned about what we're calling like the missing middle, right? People coming out of college, or it's their first job or they don't make enough money for market rate. And so there's a couple things that we're doing at the city. It's not going to create an immediate solution, but I'm hopeful that over the next several months we're going to start to see impact. On the funding side, we create an affordable housing fund. We just allocated about $5 million to help fill the gap for a number of housing projects throughout our city, and those will be coming online. To see some of that development in quite a few neighborhoods throughout the city. More multi-unit developments. We also need to be concerned about single family and duplexes and multiplexes, kind of smaller scale developments as well. The housing TIF package that I told you about, that state, it's an opportunity to use tax increment financing to help offset the cost of smaller scale projects, both for rental and for home ownership. So I'm really excited about that as an opportunity. So on the funding side, we're working really hard, what we can do locally, but also what we can do in partnership with the state. And then on the policy side, and huge opportunity side. So about 2 weeks ago, the full city commission, we met with our full planning commission, and we talked about what we could do to increase relatively quickly housing supply. So one of them is that we currently have a rule in the city of Grand Rapids that no more than 4 unrelated individuals in a house. We're talking about increasing that to 6. So let's say you have a 6-bedroom large house and you want to rent out each of those rooms individually, which is much more affordable for an individual, and then share common space. Soon you'll be able to do that. It'll also help programs like Well House. So you talked about the helping people find affordable a place to live, especially individuals who are unsheltered. Well House is a great example of that. They currently have houses where 4 unrelated individuals live. They just rent out a room and they share the common space. If this policy change goes through, they'll be able to increase that to 6. Things we're looking at changing lot size. So we have a lot of smaller lots in the city that right now are not buildable. So we're looking at decreasing lot size to make those buildable lots. We're looking at decreasing parking requirements and really thinking about how do we have a city that's built for people, not for cars. Not thinks that's a great, but parking can be very, very expensive when you're looking at developments. We're looking at changing some of our rules about where we allow duplexes by right on major corridors like Plainfield and Alpine and 28th Street and Lake Michigan. So you could take a house and convert it into a duplex, and then you have a place to live, secondary income. You can do that by right. And then we're looking at what we can do to increase accessory dwelling units. So these are the units that are typically behind a person's house above their garage. They tend to be smaller, anywhere from 400 to 600 square feet, but they tend to be really affordable, especially for people. So how can we incent people to convert their garages and their space, again, for affordable housing, but also for a secondary income? So those are some of the policy things that we're looking at. But know that it's a priority. I wish I had a magic wand and I could fix it, but it's a really complex issue. Best that we as we can.
And the policy changes would be voted on by the commission if they get to that point?
Yep, so they would actually first be voted on by our planning commission, which is an appointed body. That's a quasi-judicial body, and so all of the planning decisions are made by them. Then some of them come to us for final approval. These changes are zoning code would go to the planning commission and then to the full city commission for final approval. So probably about 90 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. This next question is from Phil. Phil asked, why did the PBGR, and that's that
Participatory budgeting.
Perfect. Why did those funds get separated into amounts for you?
That is a great question. So city commission, we allocated $2 million, and then there was a lengthy debate among commissioners at the time. So this was approved about a year and a half ago, and the decision was made at neighborhoods that historically have had less investment. And when we looked at the data, we found that there has been less investment in the third ward. Now, if you're familiar with all the wards in the city, you got to be a little bit careful in drawing conclusions just from the raw numbers, because the amount of investment happens downtown because we allow for taller buildings, right? So you don't want a 24-story building in the middle of a neighborhood. That wouldn't be appropriate. So a lot of the projects downtown, they tend just to be more expensive, and you have a lot of city facilities downtown, wastewater treatment facility, city hall. The majority of downtown actually falls in the second ward. So we pulled out the city center and just looked at the wards. And so based on the data that we looked at and how much money has been invested into the different wards, we decided to break it up based on that data. And so that's why the third ward got the most money, dollars. Second to participatory budgeting, we also set aside a third ward equity fund. And last year put $1 million into that. It's been allocated to go towards the MLK Park Lodge. And then this year we also allocated another $1 million to the third ward specifically, just to try to increase investment into neighborhoods that have been disinvested in.
Wonderful. This is another question, and
All
it's
right.
a question from Ashley. It's another RFP question, so good thing we're staying on topic. Who is eligible to apply for an RFP for this PBGR program specifically, and how does the city track the funds once they're given?
As well. We have a very robust procurement process, and we do track. And so we have, what we will do is we will establish a contract, and then there will be an individual that will at the city, a city staff, who will oversee that contract, and then reports will have to come back, and then it'll all be made public, and reports will back to the full city commission at a public meeting. Who is eligible to apply? It really needs to be a nonprofit organization or an organization that has a track record doing that work. And so if you look at the RFPs, you'll see the eligibility. And so I believe there's a number of eligibility requirements. So similar to, we put out contracts where, if you build sidewalks, if you plant trees. So we have contracts for tree planting in the city and sidewalks in the city. Same thing. You can apply as a company, but you have to show your track record. You have to meet certain eligibility requirements to bid on those projects.
It looks like we have time for just one more question, and this one is from Jeremy. Why was the mayoral election moved to next year?
Oh, that's a great question. It was ultimately moved because the voters voted on it. So there was a group of individuals in town who filed a petition to move local elections from years to even years. And it passed. I mean, it didn't pass by much, but it passed. I can tell you I was very public. I was not supportive of it moving to even year for a number of reasons. One, I think there's value in being nonpartisan and having a non elected. You throw it into a presidential year, and you're just forced to connect with and to be connected to a party, and I think we're already seeing that. And then it's going to be a very busy election year, and I'm very worried that we're going to have local elections get lost in the noise. Right through a presidential election, you're going to have to raise a lot of money, and you're going to have to work harder to do that. And so I think, unfortunately, we're going to see people who may have wanted to run have a very difficult time raising money or getting their message out. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But I am concerned.
Another election. It's always a we'll see with elections.
I know. That's true. Maybe I'll be surprised.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to answer questions from myself and the community. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And thank you for tuning in to City Connection. Thank you again, Mayor, for being here, and Commissioner Drew Robbins for joining us today. And our questions. We hope to have you back soon. Until next month's episode, airing on September 11th, take care, Grand Rapids.